Yes, people, welcome. Ads here from GND Media. As promised at Christmas, I did say that I'd do a few reaction videos and see what you guys think of that. So when I said that, I had no idea at the time exactly what my first reaction video would be. And if you'd have told me that it was going to be on Venezuela... Just get me lights in there. Sorry guys, I'm going to be a bit raw for the few sessions before I get me active. If you'd have told me to be on Venezuela, I probably would have believed you in this crazy world. So yes, it's going to be on Venezuela, a country that's fairly close to my heart in the sense that, listen, if you're a socialist and a revolutionary at heart, you know, Venezuela is one of those countries, you know, especially since Hugo Chavez rose to power, created a little bit of folklore, a bit of mythology around him, which I lapped up back in the day. I thought it was fantastic. I thought the Bolivarian revolution was an amazing attempt to try and get indigenous people in Venezuela to know their rights, know their history, know about imperialism. I remember one thing that I thought was fantastic was when Chavez was in power, that anywhere in the barrios and the favelas where people were buying groceries, everyday items, anything to do with the state that they bought, anything that was sort of state-owned, food-wise or toiletries or whatever, there was a part of the Venezuelan constitution imprinted on the packaging, so that over time, indigenous people could finally realise exactly what they should expect from the state. There was things like that, lovely little touches like that. The fact that he was, this isn't not everyone's cup of tea, but the fact that he was a military man sort of gave off like Che Guevara vibes, you know, Fidel Castro vibes. He was not scared of the US at all. There's a famous speech at the UN where basically George W. Bush had been speaking, and Chavez comes on a little bit later and completely rips him a new one. So fearless, revolutionary, and as a socialist, he obviously looked at what was the greatest wealth generator in Venezuela at the time, which, as I'm sure many of you will know now, who you might not have known before the last few days, Venezuela has immense oil fields and supply. I think the biggest in the world, bigger than Saudi Arabia, I believe. So, yes, as an environmental issue, massive. But what you got to understand is that back then, you know, the environment wasn't necessarily as prevalent as it has been, although it's dropped off again, which I mentioned in my last video has been a hard blow to take for people that are sort of eco-socialists like myself. But it was a cash generator, it was a wealth generator, and he was able to nationalise that oil with the view of taking the profits and putting it back into the poorest areas. Now, you might have an opinion about whether that happened. This isn't about that right now. I mean, listen, I would certainly say look into it. I would say look at things like the John Pilger documentary on Chavez, which was amazing. And listen, make up your own minds about that. Wherever you are in the political spectrum, that's probably where you'll sort of end up and make up an opinion. So, but, you know, the reason I'm doing this video is because the other day, last week, it could have been 10 years ago, I don't know, everything's just moving so fast. It feels like 10 years ago, but it was the other day. The US just started bombing Caracas. They took the president, Maduro, and now Maduro is in New York. In fact, they paraded him through the streets. I don't know if anybody saw that video. We basically put him in a van, opened the back doors, opened the side doors, and paraded Maduro through the streets of New York. like you would see ISIS doing to their captives. It was so bizarre. It was, honestly, it's unreal. But anyway, he's in prison. He's up against some narcotics charges that many people just think, trumped up. Pun intended. And yes, so I'm going to show a series of videos that I think capture sort of the moment. I'm sure you've seen lots of videos yourself. I'm just trying to condense what I think might be quite useful. But also, obviously, in relation to our channel, which is an environmental channel, just point out the obvious thing that isn't being mentioned anywhere as far as I can see. So we have an obligation to point that out. I'm sure you know what that is, but let's crack on. So this is a bit new to me, and a bit fiddly. So forgive me while I go through the process of being really raw on this type of thing. So I'm going to share my screen, and we're going to look at then this one. This was getting a bit of traction. I'm not seeing it all the way through yet, but it seemed to capture in a very short space of time, because I don't want these videos to run and run and run. Some of the history of Venezuela in regards to their oil and in regards to their relationship with the US. I will be honest, I'm not sure who this person is, and yes, it is important that you check sources. She seems legit. She seems a teacher and a writer and that sort of thing. I've had a look through some of the comments and stuff. She seems fairly legit. She's got a good a big influence on Instagram. But like I say, not 100% sure who she is, but when I was watching it, she did seem to have her facts pretty straight. So yeah, and it was a shortish video. So let's get into it. Yeah. Okay.
In order to understand what's going on today,
sorry about this.
You need to understand what has gone on before. That's why history is so important, guys. Come on. Venezuela and the U.S.
Okay, yes, Venezuela and the U.S.
Because I feel like doing history metaphorically difficult. Number one, pre-1998. Pre-1998, Venezuela had a huge oil supply, actually biggest in the world, and the biggest stakeholder was a U.S. company called Exxon.
I'm sure everybody's heard of them.
Why is this important? Because of their huge oil supply in Venezuela, Exxon took it over. So the vast amount of profit, the percentage of profit, went to the U.S., and Venezuela as a country got next to nothing. And because of this, their economy started to fail. And as their economy started to fail, guess what? A dictator waiting in the wings wanted to jump in and save themselves from God knows who, from the United States. How do I get steak and oil companies just taking over the entire world? Number two, 1998. That's not right. I hate it when I can't write numbers properly. Hugo Chavez,
the main man,
was a democratically elected president of Venezuela. Now, once he got in, again, I say democratically, he started to push towards authoritarianism, and he started reducing the checks and balances of the democratic system. Side point, does that remind you of anybody else? He also started to rewrite the Constitution to...
Yeah, I just want to jump in there. So, there's obviously there's an angle there where she's saying that Chavez started to create an authoritarian system. That will need a bit more of a deep dive regarding the politics of Venezuela at the time. If it was all set up to have the wealth of the country shipped out to, in this case, the US, And that's all tied up in legislation that was created by previous administrations that had ties to the elites and whatnot. Then, you know, having a massive mandate for change, it is fairly legitimate on what you do change and whether you could say that is that authoritarian or is that sort of strong-arming the legislation that was put in prior to what they call the Bolivarian Revolution. So needs a bit more of a deep dive for that, guys. That is reductionist, but listen, it's a TikTok vid, so you know we move.
Solidify his dictatorial power. Parallels are really uncanny. 2002, a woman named Maria Machado. I don't know how I said that, but keep that name locked in your head because she's going to be important later. Created an organization called SUMAT in order to overthrow the Chavez government.
Psst, who do you think was funding her operation?
You guessed it, George W. Bush, President of the United States at the time.
And just very quickly again, so Maria Machado, there is video footage of her trying to sort of lambaste Chavez in some forum where he's on the stage, and she's this is a very new group at the time, and you know, it just shows you what can happen. But yeah, Chavez at the time, he sort of looks at her and says, you know, I think something like, you know, you're trying to drag down a revolution, or you're trying to put me in my place. But I think he says eagles don't concern themselves with the opinions of flies, something like that. Very machoistic, not everybody's cup of tea, but it does show you that, listen, if you keep on the grind like this Maria Machado has, then you know eventually your time could come. You know, we have this with sort of like Nigel Farage in the UK, absolute laughing stock to begin with, and you know, look where he is. You know, he's been mocked and stuff in Parliament in very similar ways, but he's still grinding, he's still doing his thing, he's still finding ways to cause a bit of chaos, and who's to say where he'll eventually end up. So yeah, just thought I'd add that as a little bit of context as well.
Was funding her through the National Endowment of Democracy. You know what? People just make up names to mean anything nowadays. So through this National Endowment for Democracy, the United States funded Machado in order to overthrow Chavez. And when it didn't work, Bush said, not my problem, I didn't know anything about it. And she was eliminated from all political life going forward. And then in 2002, Bush was a very busy guy. Number 4, in 2007, Chavez, reinvigorated with power and an authoritarian regime, decides to nationalize Venezuelan oil. That meant that Venezuela took all of Exxon's money, all their oil, and all their access to oil, and shifted the lion's share of profits back to Venezuela and left Exxon, well, not a lot of money. P.S. Exxon then sued and won $1.4 billion in a claim. But what kind of international police force are we going to get for Venezuela to be forced to pay Exxon? None. After that huge shift of economic power, Venezuelan oil dropped from 3 million barrels a day way down to 700,000 barrels a day due to corruption and, let's be honest, informal sanctions put on them by the United States because they just stole a bunch of their money from corporations. Stole might be a U.S. word, considering...
Yeah, and this is where, wherever you lie on the political spectrum, you know, some will say corruption, the right wing will say it was all corruption, you know, the left wing will say that US sanctions is what has hampered Venezuelan advancement and economic advancement and an ability. If you can put sanctions on Venezuela, it means there's less profits to put back into society. So that's all about where you land on the political spectrum.
The oil was on Venezuelan land and considered a Venezuelan resource, but who's counting? The U.S. really does imperialism out of 10, don't they? Ooh, new chalk. Number 5, a guy named Madero, used to be the VP of Chavez, takes over, and he starts building an even stronger authoritarian government. I forgot the year, 2013. Obama calls the drug cartel and this particular regime a threat to democracy and national security of the United States. That's then followed by Trump putting on economic sanctions in 2017. Are you with me so far? This is about to get interesting. Interesting, I mean even more corrupt. 6, 2025. I brought you right up to the present. Maria Machado.
Okay, so big jump to 2025. Maria Machado.
Prize. And who does she dedicate it to?
The Nobel Peace Prize, which is
Trump.
A shock to many.
It's at this point that Donald Trump begins attacking boats, Venezuelan boats, calling them drug cartels, talking about revitalizing and restoring democracy to Venezuela, and talking about how they're a threat to national security. And guess what? The U.S. got to go in and save some people. Oh, and P.S., Donald Trump wants his oil back. It's the ending that's really going to get you. The big question about why Donald Trump is doing this is why, and I think the answer is going to surprise you a little bit. Number 1, he is going to claim that he is going to liberate Venezuela. Guys, always be careful when the United States of America liberates anything, because usually it means they're going to take it. And he's going to install Maria as the president, formally excommunicated from all political life, but she's going to serve a purpose. Number 2, Machado will then give oil rights back to, you guessed it, Exxon. 80% goes to them, 20%.
Yeah, so just want to say, at time of recording, Maria Machado isn't looking like she's going to be installed. There was a sort of a video where Donald Trump was basically saying no, she doesn't. When a journalist sort of put it to him, is he going to bring her back? And he basically said, no, I don't think she's got the people behind her. Raised a lot of eyebrows. Because it's Donald Trump, obviously people were saying, was it because she won the Nobel Peace Prize that he doesn't like her? She's obviously recently, last few days, been saying she's going to give him the Nobel Peace Prize, which again is farcical. But I will show a little video about this Maria Machado, just because there is a narrative around her and her intentions, and I think the best way to confront that is to show you what she is saying in her own words. So anyway, back to this one. It's nearly finished, this one now.
Back to Venezuela. Everybody's happy and a new power is installed, but that's not the only reason this is happening. This last one's going to blow you away. Number 3. Is it about oil? Absolutely. They want control of the world's biggest oil supply, but that's not the full answer. What the real answer is U.S. currency rates. Follow along, this gets tricky. Oil has always been traded in U.S. dollars, called petrol. And what that has served the United States in doing is solidifying, is stabilizing, is increasing U.S. dollars. Because if anybody wants to buy oil anywhere in the world, they have to use U.S. currency. It artificially inflates the price of the U.S. dollar and stabilizes the U.S. economy. This is the real problem. Because what Trump and the United States is really afraid of are BRICS nations. What are they? They are nations, they are countries that are bound together and are starting to trade without the United States, especially oil.
Okay, yeah, so she's intimating as well that the BRICS nations, which are a group of nations, can't quite remember what it stands for, Brazil, 100% sure. But it's a number of nations that they're thinking, right, we're going to trade outside of the US, and it won't be the US dollar. Yes, very well. Could be. Not 100% sure of the information around that, but that's definitely one to watch. But I think overall, that was a pretty decent sort of, nice little snippet there. I know it's a TikTok vid, but she did a good job there. I think the next video I just want to show is one that will give people a sense of why America want Venezuela's oil. Now, there is Donald Trump, as in the past, has said, oh, it's crap oil, this, we don't need that oil. And then he's changed his mind. I think this video actually is pretty good. I won't watch it all, but it's pretty good to explain why Venezuelan oil is essential to the US. 2 ticks.
Tankers off the coast of Venezuela comes back to drugs, the trade, the smuggling of illegal drugs out of Venezuela. But what if it's not just that? Maybe there's something else going on. What if it's partly about oil? Now, on the surface, you might be thinking, why does America even need Venezuelan oil? And I can kind of understand your point, because if you look at just total oil production, look, this is up until 2005, the US was there, Venezuela was there, Saudi Arabia was there. But as you probably know, since then, everything has changed. Look, American output has gone through the roof, way above Saudi Arabia, way above Saudi Arabia. And Venezuela has gone basically to the floor. And that's kind of post-Chavez, Maduro. They're one of the minnows now, I think 21st biggest producer in the world. So again, that question, why should America care? Well, in the US, that big rise is largely down to this. It's down to the shale revolution. So you've got fracking all around the US producing extraordinary amounts of crude oil. And here's where we get to the interesting bit. Because when you're thinking about crude oil, maybe you're just thinking about, well, look, barrels of oil. It's all the same, isn't it? Well, actually, no. So if you kind of look at crude oil, there are various different types of crude in different parts of the world. There's actually kind of various different ways you can categorize it. But one way you can look at it is look at the kind of density. So you're basically looking at how thick that crude is. And when I say thick, I mean literally how thick. This is showing you global production broken down by the density of that oil. And so you've got the kind of medium stuff. And this is probably, if you've got kind of image in your mind of what crude oil looks like, it's a bit like this, it's kind of black, but it's not too viscous, it flows around. But there's other stuff as well. So this is light crude. And it kind of almost looks like a smoothie, doesn't it? And that's the same stuff. This is still crude oil, but down to the kind of geological and the biological conditions in the ground when it was being formed, hundreds of millions of years ago, it comes out looking a bit different. And so that's light. You've also got heavy stuff. And it's kind of relatively small in global production, but this is gloopy, super viscous stuff, heavy oil. So heavy, medium, light. Remember that. And remember also the key thing here is you get it out of the ground, it may look like that, but ultimately you still need it to go into, someone's car, or indeed, be turned into chemicals. Basically, you need to process it. And that processing, that happens in places like this, in refineries. And there are refineries all over the world, of course. There are refineries all over the US as well. There's kind of more than 100 of them. And if we kind of look at
as an environmentalist, seeing those pictures, it's like looking at Mordor to me.
The history in America, actually, historically, a lot of the early Californian oil, that was the heavy, gloopy stuff. And if you look at kind of some of the refineries in America, so here are some of the refineries. There's one in LA there. These are the 10 biggest. You've got some up here around kind of towards Canada. We'll kind of come to that in a second. But a lot of them are down there, kind of Texas, Louisiana, on the coast. And here's the critical thing. These refineries are primarily set up for heavy oil.
This is
for
the
taking
key.
that gloopy stuff and turning it into gasoline and all of the other different products. But here's where things get interesting. And remember that chart I showed you a moment ago, the one which showed kind of shale oil and how it kind of went through the roof. The oil that's generally produced with shale oil, the fracking oil, That comes out of the ground
Light.
mostly in the light form. So it's the smoothie. It's sometimes actually even clear. It comes out of the ground
No
clear rather
processing
than
needed.
black. And that's the majority of American production right now. Shale oil tends to be light stuff. And actually,
very little.
that's kind of going back 10 years. Look at where we are now. Look at those bars. In the last few years, the amount of light oil being produced in the US has gone up and up and up, and the amount of kind of heavy stuff has gone down. But back to those refineries. They need to be fed. If America's going to have gasoline, it needs to feed those refineries
This is key.
with heavy oil. So if you look at the kind of imports coming into America, in recent years, even though America is producing just so much oil, more oil than it ever produced before, it still needs to suck in loads of oil from overseas. And the type of oil we're talking about, it used to be, it's mostly heavy crude. It used to be only 12%. So only 12% of imports were heavy, gloopy crude. Now, it's about 70%. So 70% of the oil coming into America, which it needs to basically keep its economy going, is heavy crude. And where does heavy crude come from? Well, here are some of the
Listen,
big
guys,
countries
you know
where
where it comes from, yeah? It mainly is going to come from Venezuela. That is key. So he's connecting the type of oil that Venezuela pumps out to the situation of the oil refineries in the US. And that's I'm not going to play much more because of obviously I don't want to go on for too long today, but that's key right there. So this idea that all oil's the same, or well, we can get it here, we can get it there, or the US produces more gas and oil than any other country. For Venezuelan oil to be processed, it's going to take a lot of industry, a US industry, to create the gas and oil that's needed to pretty much run the world. And that is key as to why, a big part of why the US will want specifically Venezuelan oil. So that's it in a nutshell, guys. And a little bit of history there and the reasons why, Venezuelan oil is very, very sought after for US industry and economics. Now then, I did say that I'm going to show you a little video from Maria Machado. Again, this is in her own words. This is me putting a political slant on it. This is Maria Machado speaking with Trump's son, Don Jr. And let's see what she has to say, guys, because this is the lady that got the Nobel Peace Prize, by the way. And I'll leave it up to you to decide whether you think she was a worthy winner. Okay, give me 1 second. Which one is it? There she is. There she is.
More oil. I mean, infinite potential. And we're going to open markets. We're going to kick off the government from the oil sector. We are going to privatize all our industry. Venezuela has huge resources: oil, gas, minerals, land, technology. And as you said before, we have a strategic location, hours from the United States. So we're going to do.
Sorry, I just got to jump in. I mean, again, from an environmental point of view, the fact that she is pimping out everything, every mineral, gas, oil, yes, you're supposed to be a steward of the land that you are on. You're not supposed to just rape that land and sell it to the highest bidder if we want a healthy and balanced ecosystem. So to hear this, honestly, man, it turns my stomach. But yeah, let's continue. Let's continue.
This right. We know what we have to do. And American companies are in, super strategic position to invest. This country, Venezuela, is going to be the brightest opportunity for investment of American companies, of good people that are going to make a lot of money for
Yeah, in a nutshell, you know, she's basically begging Don Jr. to tell his dad to pick me, put me in power. I will sell everything to you guys, which will enrich only a very small amount of the Venezuelan so-called elite. They're not elite in my eyes, but that's what they'll be known as. And this, honestly, man, this is the alternative, by the way. This is, you know, there's three things. There's two things now, because they've taken Maduro. Okay, so they're going to either berate, threaten the Maduro regime that's still there into accepting everything that the US wants, but staying in power, or they're going to give somebody like a Maria Machado, who is just going to bend over and give the US every single thing they want to get power. And yes, this is the world that is before us at the moment, and it is not good, man. It is not good. So yes, Maria Machado, Nobel Peace Prize winner. Oh, another thing as well, that Nobel Peace Prize, she's also said that if Trump can get her into power, she will give it to him. So absolute made a complete farce of that as well. Yes. Okay, well, Trump did as well recently just say that when he was asked who did he involve in the decision for Venezuela, in a sane world, he would have said the Democrats. But what he said was, it was American oil executives. He said they were the people that he spoke to about the actions that were taken in Venezuela, hinting that everything's in place for them to move in and to basically start the machines to generate the profit back to the US. Turns out, again, not surprising, it's Trump, innit? He did no such thing. Here's some oil executives saying the hurdles that are in place for them because of the infrastructure currently in Venezuela and the investments that will need to be made, and also the fact that they have been, depending on political circumstances that can change again and again, they may have all their assets taken off them like they have in the past. So absolute bullshit from Donald Trump once again. He basically did it on a whim. It didn't involve anyone, just wanted to do it. I mean, there was one story there that he thought Maduro was taking the mick out of his dancing. That may have been it, man. That may have just been like, right, moving. Yeah, let me just tell you this one here. Trump's reality check.
We've had our assets seized there twice. And so you can imagine to
re-enter
a third time would require some pretty significant changes from what we've historically seen here and what is currently the state. If we look at the legal and commercial constructs and frameworks in place today in Venezuela, today it's uninvestable. We first got into Venezuela back in 1940s. We've had our assets.
Yeah. It's uninvestable at the moment. And plus, it's precarious. It's a precarious part of the world. Listen, I have no sympathy for fucking these guys, but I can understand from a business perspective not wanting to do this just because Trump says, you know, that he's going to back it and do all these things. I think everybody knows by now that what Trump says, what Trump does is, you know, two wildly different things. Yeah, so do you know what? I won't take up your time much longer. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, give it a like, give it a share. But obviously, from GND Media's perspective, environmentalist perspectives, from the Earth's perspective, god damn it, one thing that I haven't heard, which in 2026, with all the wins we thought we'd made in previous years, it does shock me, but also due to the last 12 months, doesn't shock me at all. Nobody's really stating the fact that another war or another clash or another turmoil, turning the world upside down into chaos around oil. There's a couple of things here that's really, really worrying. The first one is, if the US are going to do this, that should be a wake-up call, and it should be clarification that they have no intention of divesting, dismantling the oil and gas industry. Now, obviously, if you've been paying attention, or if you've been an environmentalist for a number of years, you're going to have a jaded and pessimistic view of things, and so it isn't completely shocking. However, there is also a part of you that believes or wants to believe that the world is coming away from a reliance on gas and oil. This just confirms that from the US's perspective, which is the biggest dog in town, that ain't happening anytime soon. I am pretty sure that if, let's just say, that a flow of oil does happen to go from Venezuela to the US, and somehow investments made where that pipeline, that cheap oil for the US happens, I'm under no illusions that when Trump gets wiped out at the next election and the Democrats ride in with a massive mandate, that they'll stop that cash flow. No fucking chance. So we are still in a world soaked in oil, and it looks like we will be for many a decade. Now, when you're on a clock, an environmental clock, that's not good, man. That is not fucking good. And the fact that nobody's connecting these clashes are over a substance that we're supposed to be coming away from, you would almost have wanted by now a narrative, a mainstream narrative, or at least be fucking mentioned, but a narrative around, yes, this is turmoil right now, but as the world turns away from gas and oil, these things will become less important in the future. These things will become less relevant. Yes, let's deal with this now. Let's try and negotiate in diplomatic ways and through treaties and policies to get through this emergency, because right now the world is run on oil. However, let's also accept and look to the future that this is not going to be a problem in X amount of years. Now, I've seen loads of footage on this, loads from all sources, progressives, a lot, yeah, mainstream, right, well, obviously the right wing, there's not going to be much fruit there, but I haven't heard anybody say, well, we need to come off oil to get away from this bullshit. Not a fucking word. So, I'm going to say it, yeah, we need to get off fucking oil and gas, people. Yeah, this cannot continue. These oil-rich countries should not be a target in the very near future because the earth depends on it. So there, I've said it. At least one person and one media organisation has said it. So at least it's out there. It's not fully dead. Because if it's fully dead, we're fully dead. So Okay, so that's the end of the video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Like I say, I'm very raw. It's one take. I'll look back and say I should have said that. I should have said that. I'm trying to keep it freestyle. I'm trying to keep it in one take. It's easier to edit that way, but also as well, I don't want it to be scripted. I don't want it to be too sort of like, you know, too robotic. It's just me shouting at the screen. But hopefully, a couple of you will listen. And appreciate some of those videos. I will end on, is it funny? It's funny, but it's also insane. But it's also true, but it's also insane that it's true, but that he doesn't know that it also means that the US are a bunch of robber barons like everyone else. But it's kind of connected as well. So it's about Greenland. Now, for those who don't know, where have you been? But the US has been threatening to invade Greenland or buy it, or if you don't buy it, we're going to invade, or you're threatening and all this sort of stuff. And it could cause a bit of chaos. I can't see a war over it. I really can't. I think at the end of the day, if the US really want it, they probably will buy it off Denmark, for as much as Denmark are giving it the big one. But the reason that they want Greenland is because of climate change. Greenland is now thawing to the extent that the vast wealth of minerals and stuff that's in the ground will very soon people will be able to get to it. Again, this is the world we're in. This shouldn't even be a thing in 2026, but here we are again. However, as justification as to why Trump feels that the US have a claim, or that Denmark don't have a claim, I will leave you with this. And if you don't know the irony of this, mate, read a book.
I'm a big fan, but you know, the fact that they had a boat land there 500 years ago doesn't mean that they own the land. And, you know, they've been very nice to me. I'm a big fan, but you know, the fact that they had a boat land there 500 years ago doesn't mean that they own the land. And, you know, they've been very nice to me. I'm a big fan, but you know, the fact that they had a boat land there 500 years ago doesn't mean that they own the land. And they've been very nice to me.
I'll leave it there, people. Until next time. Stay safe. I'll see you soon.